Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My wife said her whereabouts were not my business as she left for another client emergency weekend with her millionaire boss. At 2:17 in the morning, my phone lit up with her desperate calls, 18 of them in a row. I watched every single one ring out, read every panicked text begging for help, and did absolutely nothing. That was the night I decided mercy, forgiveness, and being the good man were no longer my business, either. My name is Elijah Brooks. I am 36 years old, a black man from Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is how I dismantled two lives with the same cold efficiency I once used to erect steel frameworks for stadiums and high-rises. The kind of rage that burns slow and steady is the dangerous kind. It does not explode, it calculates. That is what I felt when I came home early from a month-long project in rural Oklahoma, expecting to surprise my wife Jasmine with flowers and maybe finally have that conversation about starting a family. Instead, the surprise was mine, and it cut deeper than any blade. My truck engine cut off in our garage, and for a brief moment, everything felt right. The house we had chosen together in one of Charlotte's nicest suburbs. The manicured lawn. The quiet cul-de-sac where kids rode bikes in circles. The whole black middle-class dream, polished and perfect. I grabbed my duffel bag, already picturing Jasmine's face when she saw me. We had been married for 7 years, and despite the distance my work sometimes demanded, I thought we were solid. Rock solid. The kind of marriage people envied. I was wrong. The front door was unlocked, which should have been my first warning. Jasmine is paranoid about security, always double-checking locks, checking cameras, setting the alarm, even for quick trips. She had insisted on a $1,500 security system last year, saying she felt unsafe when I traveled. Now I understood why she wanted something she could disable easily. I stepped into the foyer, my boots quiet on the hardwood I had installed myself, and heard a sound that froze my blood. Laughter. Her laughter. Not the polite social laugh she used at company dinners, but the soft, intimate laugh that used to be mine. The one I had not heard in years. It floated down the hallway, sweet and careless, and underneath it came a deeper voice. A man's voice. Confident, smooth, coated with the easy arrogance of money and the kind of power that has never been told no for long. They were in the living room, probably on the couch I had carried up piece by piece when the movers bailed on us, drinking wine I had paid for with money earned through 70-hour work weeks on blazing job sites. They were using my space, my time, and my sweat as props in their little private drama. I stopped just inside the shadow of the hallway and listened, invisible in my own home. Next Friday works perfectly, Jasmine was saying, her voice holding that playful lilt she used to reserve for me when we were dating. I could picture her leaning toward him, eyes shining, lips glossed. Elijah will be in Detroit for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 if the project drags like they usually do. We could take the whole weekend at Blue Ridge Summit. I'll tell him it is a last-minute client crisis. He will believe it. He always does. The man, Reginald, though I did not know his name yet, laughed a low, satisfied sound. You are getting too good at this, Jazz. Makes me wonder what other secrets you are hiding. What other lies you have perfected. His tone was half joking, half admiring, like a coach praising his star player for bending the rules and still scoring. Do not worry, Reggie, Jasmine said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You are my only secret. My most expensive, most thrilling secret. My escape from the boring life I have been living. They laughed together, a perfect duet of betrayal, and something inside me cracked. Not shattered completely, just enough to let the pressure build, like a dam waiting to give way and drown everything downstream. I could have walked in right then. I could have flipped on the lights, caught them with wine glasses in hand and guilt all over their faces. I could have thrown punches, broken furniture, become the cliché of the betrayed black husband losing his mind in his own living room. Instead, I went perfectly still, because in that moment, standing in the shadow of my own hallway with my duffel bag clenched in my hand, I remembered something about myself I had forgotten while trying so hard to be the dependable husband and unshakable provider. I am a builder, yes, but I am also a destroyer when I need to be. I have torn down structures before rebuilding them stronger, watched walls fall and controlled explosions. Sometimes you demolish first, so something better can stand in its place. Right then I knew, whatever we had was already rubble. All that was left was to decide whose lives would be buried in it. I backed out of the house, silently, every step precise and deliberate. Old training surfaced, the kind that comes from years in the army, moving in places where being noticed could mean you did not come home. I slipped back into my truck, started the engine with hands that did not shake, and drove to the Copper Line, a dim bar on the industrial side of town where my friend Leon Rivers spent most evenings. Leon and I had served together. We were both black, both from southern cities, both familiar with sand, sweat, and bullets. He had pulled me out of a bad situation more than once, and I had done the same for him. We had seen one another at our worst without ever needing to explain. If anyone would understand what I was ready to become, it was Leon. The bar looked the same as always. Low lights, old R&B on the jukebox, men staring into glasses like they were reading the future. A couple of women at the far end, half listening to a man who was promising them things he would never deliver. Leon sat in his usual booth in the corner, nursing a bourbon and watching the room with those sharp, assessing eyes of his. He clocked me the second I walked in. "You look like somebody told you your mama died," Leon said as I slid into the booth across from him. He took in my tense shoulders, my blank expression, the way my jaw worked. "But your mama is fine. So what happened?" His voice was calm, but his body shifted like he was bracing for impact. I stared at the scar on his knuckle where a bullet had grazed him years ago. My throat felt tight, like I had swallowed gravel. "Jasmine is cheating on me," I managed finally. "With her boss. In my house. Right now. Probably on my couch. Maybe in my bed soon." Saying it out loud made it more real. It also made something inside me go cold. Leon was not surprised. That annoyed me more than it should have. He just nodded slowly, sipped his drink, and asked, "How long you known?" His tone was clinical, the way he used to sound when he was checking wounds. "I found out 20 minutes ago," I said. "Came home early. Heard them planning the next business trip. And I left instead of putting him through the wall." I let that hang there, because even in my own ears it sounded like cowardice or patience, depending on how you framed it. Leon watched me quietly. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you leave?" There was no judgment in his voice, just curiosity from a man who understood violence and restraint in equal measure. "Because I have a better plan," I said, and my own voice startled me. It was low, flat, almost gentle. Leon's mouth curved into a small, dangerous smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Go on then," he said. "Tell me what you need." Over the next week, what I needed turned into a carefully drawn blueprint. I went back to Oklahoma, finished my project, and pretended everything was normal. When I returned home, on schedule, Jasmine greeted me at the door with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes and a hug that did not last long enough. I kissed her cheek like always, set my bag down, and acted as if I had not heard her make plans to spend a weekend at Blue Ridge Summit with another man. Jasmine is a beautiful black woman with smooth brown skin and a smile that used to light up rooms. She had upgraded her wardrobe in the last 2 years. Designer dresses, shoes I knew cost more than a mortgage payment for some families, silk blouses that did not belong to the budget we had agreed on. At first, I thought she was just enjoying the fruits of my labor. Later, I realized she was auditioning for another life. That week, I moved through her home like a ghost. We ate dinner together. We watched a show or two. She scrolled through her phone constantly, screen always face down whenever I walked into the room. When I asked casual questions about work, she mentioned her boss, Reginald Cole, every chance she got. "Reggie said this, Reggie thinks that, Reggie wants me on that new campaign." She said his name the way she used to say mine when we were first in love. I did not confront her. Instead, I watched her like I was studying a structure under stress, cataloging every crack, every forced laugh, every strangely timed emergency meeting, every "I am exhausted, maybe tomorrow night," when I reached for her in bed. I was gathering data, not begging for honesty. I had stopped looking for truth from her the moment I heard that laughter in my living room. Meanwhile, Leon got to work. He had friends, private investigators, some ex-military, some just nosy and fearless. For a little cash and a lot of bourbon, they followed Jasmine on her late nights. They took clear, full-color pictures of her wrapped around Reginald in hotel lobbies, elevator corners, upscale restaurants. They recorded them entering rooms together at Blue Ridge Summit, a resort near Asheville, at a boutique hotel in uptown Charlotte that I had once considered taking her to for our anniversary. The files came in daily. Leon would slide a USB drive or envelope across the table at the bar, and I would take it home, lock my office door, and go through every image and record with cold eyes. It made my stomach turn, but I did not look away. Pain sharpened into purpose. Every photo, every credit card receipt, every timestamp became a piece of ammunition. Jasmine did not know that 2 years earlier, when she had first started to seem distant and the warmth in her eyes began to dry up like a lake in August, I had started quietly protecting myself. Some instinct deep in my bones told me to build a separate foundation. I had been in construction and engineering for 15 years. I had relationships with developers across 3 states. People trusted Elijah Brooks to get jobs done ahead of schedule and under budget. While Jasmine scrolled social media and complained about how boring our life had become, I had formed a company in secret, Brooks Steel Solutions. On paper, it was a small fabrication firm that rented warehouse space and specialized in custom steel work. Behind that simple description, my accountant, Calvin Hodge, and my attorney, Nicole Freeman, had built a legal fortress. Trusts, holding companies, and layered corporations spread through Delaware, Nevada, and the Carolinas. Jasmine thought I was just a well-paid contractor. She had no idea I was quietly becoming a multimillionaire. I separated everything. New contracts went through Brooks Steel Solutions. Profits were funneled into accounts Jasmine's name never touched. The house, which I had purchased before we married, stayed in my name alone. The vehicles were in my name. Retirement accounts? Separate. Savings? Mine. That was not because I expected betrayal. It was because I knew life did not care about good intentions. By the time I discovered her affair, Brooks Steel Solutions had $30 million in contracts lined up and profits that made my old paychecks look like tips. Calvin knew. Nicole knew. No one else. Certainly not Jasmine, who was too busy praising Reginald's vision to ask why I spent so many nights in my office. 3 weeks after I overheard Jasmine planning her mountain getaway, we had the conversation that sealed her fate. She stood in front of our bedroom mirror in a dress I had never seen. Smooth black fabric molded perfectly to her figure, gold jewelry catching the light. Her perfume floated through the room, and it was not the one I bought her last Christmas. "You look nice," I said calmly from the bed, laptop open, spreadsheets glowing on the screen. My tone was neutral, observational. She had been craving drama, picking small fights lately, testing boundaries. I refused to give her the fire she wanted. "I'm going out," Jasmine announced, smoothing her dress and giving herself one more approving look. "A client dinner. Important networking. Late." Her words were clipped, her posture too stiff. She wanted me to question her, to make a scene so she could throw the blame back at me. "Where?" I asked, as if it were any other night in 7 years of marriage. I did not sigh. I did not roll my eyes. I just looked at her and waited. A simple question, one any husband has a right to ask. She spun around, eyes flashing with a mix of guilt and contempt. "Where I am going is not your business, Elijah. Not your concern. Not your problem. Honestly, you have been unbearable lately. Cold, distant, married to your work. Maybe if you paid half as much attention to your wife as you do to your precious projects, I would not need to find my own entertainment." The audacity nearly made me laugh. The woman sleeping with her boss in my house was lecturing me about attention. Instead of exploding, I nodded slowly, as if she had just made a good point. "You are right," I said in a flat, even tone. "Your whereabouts are not my business. Have a good night, Jasmine, and do not wait up for me tomorrow. I will be busy too." She hesitated, clearly thrown off by my calm. She had expected accusations, begging, maybe tears. When I turned my eyes back to the laptop and resumed typing, she grabbed her purse and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the hallway wall. I listened to the house settle again and started counting slowly in my head, letting my anger drain into something colder, something useful. Rage is wild and sloppy. Ice is precise. When I reached 100, I picked up my phone and sent Leon a text. "It is time. Get everything ready. We move tomorrow." He replied almost instantly. "About damn time. Target." I typed back, both. Maximum damage. No mercy. That night at 2:30 in the morning, My phone began to buzz on the nightstand. I was lying awake on my back, staring at the ceiling, mind ticking through timelines and options. The vibration was loud in the quiet room. Jasmine's name flashed across the screen. Once, twice, 3 times, 4. 18 calls in less than 30 minutes. I let it ring. I watched the screen without lifting a finger. After the calls came the texts, each one more frantic than the last. Elijah, please answer. Emergency. I need you. Something is wrong. I am scared. Please do not do this. The typos multiplied as the panic set in. I watched each message arrive. I read every word. I felt nothing but a cold, distant satisfaction. I knew what was happening. Reginald liked control and enjoyed danger as long as he was the one writing the rules. Men like him love risk until the bill comes due. Something had gone sideways. An argument, maybe, or a bad neighborhood near their hotel, or a situation he decided was too messy to own. Jasmine was finally learning what it felt like to reach for help and find only silence. Eventually, I turned the phone off and slept better than I had in months. In the morning, Jasmine stumbled into the kitchen, just as the sun was turning the sky pale blue. Her makeup was smeared, one of her heels was broken, and her expensive dress was torn at the seam. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she smelled like expensive cologne that was not mine in stale fear. Elijah, she whispered when she saw me drinking coffee at the counter. I called you over and over. Why did you not answer? Why were you not there? I could have been hurt. Her voice trembled. Underneath the fear, though, there was outrage, offended that I had not shown up to save her from the fallout of her choices. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the pause stretch. I figured where you were going was not my business, I said lightly. So where you were when you needed help also was not my business. Seemed logical. I tilted my head. You look terrible, by the way. Rough night. Jasmine's face twisted. A dozen emotions chased one another across her features. Shock, shame, anger, confusion. You are a bastard, she said finally. You are cruel. I could have been in real danger. I could have been assaulted or killed. And you just ignored me? You left me alone. And yet, I said calmly, here you are. Alive. Standing in my kitchen. Without any help from me at all. Funny how you managed. I set my mug down and stood. I have a meeting downtown. Important one. Do not wait up. At the door I paused. Jasmine, you might want to shower. You still smell like someone else's cologne. My meeting was with Nicole Freeman, a black woman in her 40s with a reputation in Charlotte family courts that bordered on legendary. Her office at the top of a glass tower overlooked the city skyline, all sharp lines and quiet luxury. When I finished laying out my story, spread the photos Leon had gathered, the printouts of texts I had pulled from our phone records, and the financial documentation Calvin and I had assembled, Nicole leaned back and gave me a long, measuring look. Elijah, she said finally, steepling her fingers, I have been practicing family law for 20 years. I have seen every kind of betrayal, every excuse, every lie. This, she tapped the top folder, is a lawyer's dream. A cheating spouse who is also involved in corporate misconduct, an arrogant boss with a history of harassment and shady accounting, and a client who actually prepared. You're not a victim coming in here with hurt feelings. You are a strategist. I can work with that. We spent hours that day building our plan. No cameras, no theatrics, just Nicole's calm voice and my cold determination. We went through my company's structure, ensuring that Jasmine had no legal claim to assets that were clearly and safely separate. We documented every charge she had made from our joint accounts for hotels, flights, and gifts that had nothing to do with me. Nicole had her paralegal create a visual timeline that made Jasmine's lies stand out in bold red ink. This Reginald Cole, Nicole said, pulling up his information, has a paper trail that smells like smoke. Multiple quiet harassment complaints, settlements paid out of corporate funds, bonus packages that do not line up with performance, and these shell contracts. She whistled softly. If we dig deeper and tie your wife to his financial tricks, we can do more than divorce them. We can ruin them. Professionally, socially, financially. Good, I answered. That is exactly the point. I do not want Jasmine to limp away and land on her feet. I want her to understand what it costs to treat someone like a fool. And I want Reginald to know he picked the wrong husband to disrespect. This is going to be messy, Nicole warned. Public. People will talk. Friends will choose sides. Social media will feast on it. Once we file, there is no putting the lid back on. She watched me closely. You sure you were ready for that? I thought of Jasmine laughing in our living room. Thought of her calling me boring. Thought of her pressing her lips against another man while I worked double shifts to pay for the life she flaunted. Thought of her saying my business was not her concern. I'm not just ready, I said. I'm counting on it. The next phase required facing Reginald himself. Not to fight him. Not yet. I wanted him to feel something he had probably never known in his entire privileged career. Fear of consequences. Leon secured me a maintenance uniform and an old ID badge from a subcontractor who owed him a favor. Between my familiarity with building systems and his contacts, walking into Cole Strategic Media's uptown office tower was almost boring. I moved through the lobby with a toolbox in hand and a clipboard under my arm. People glanced at me and then away. No one questions a black maintenance man with purpose in his stride. Not in a corporate building where executives are used as service workers fading into the background. The elevator carried me to the executive floor, and I walked straight into Reginald's outer office. His assistant looked up from her screen. "Can I help you?" she asked, polite but bored. I flipped my clipboard around so she could see the forged work order Leon's guy had printed. "Maintenance request, ma'am. Executive internet line. Got a ticket number and everything." She barely glanced at it before waving me through. "He is on a call," she muttered. "Just be quick." Reginald's office was exactly what I expected. Huge windows with a view of Charlotte's skyline. An oversized desk meant to impress, leather chairs, abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than the average car. He was on the phone, laughing loudly, feet propped up. When he saw me, his expression shifted from amused to irritated. "Can I help you?" he snapped, covering the phone's mouthpiece. "You cannot just walk in here." "Who are you?" I closed the door quietly behind me, the latch clicking into place like the final piece of a puzzle. I walked to his desk, set my toolbox down, and placed a flash drive by his keyboard. "My name is Elijah Brooks," I said evenly. "I believe you know my wife, Jasmine, very well." The color drained from his face so fast it was almost comical. He ended his call without saying goodbye, staring at me like I was a ghost. "I do not know what you are talking about," Reginald started. "You must be confused." His voice was slick, automatic, the same tone he probably used on nervous clients and ambitious employees. I raised one hand, palm out, and his words died. "Do not lie," I said quietly. "On that drive are pictures of you and Jasmine at 4 different hotels in 3 months. Video of you kissing her in a Blue Ridge Summit hallway. Screenshots of messages where you talk about what you do to her when she is supposed to be at client dinners. Records of calls between your phone and hers that run long into nights." She told me she was exhausted. I held his gaze. "Your affair is documented, Reginald, down to the minute." His hand crept toward his phone, but I continued before he could grab it. "There is more. That drive also contains files on your creative accounting. The shell companies you secretly own in Delaware that Cole Strategic Media pays for consulting. The settlements you push through the company books to bury harassment complaints. The loans you routed through friendly vendors to move money where it does not belong. 7 years of fraud and abuse, all organized nicely." Reginald's bravado leaked out of him like air from a punctured tire. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "If this is about money, I can." I laughed once. "You really think I want your money? I own a steel company, Reginald. I make more in a quarter than you make in a year. This is not blackmail. This is notification." I leaned forward, bracing my hands on his expensive desk. "You have a choice. You can end things with Jasmine quietly. You can take what is coming to you from your board and from the government without dragging her any deeper. You cooperate, and maybe I let some of this die quietly. Maybe you only lose your company and your reputation." "And if I do not?" he asked, his voice cracking just slightly. He swallowed hard, and a bead of sweat slid down his temple. It was the first honest thing I had seen from him. "If you do not," I said, my voice dropping lower, "I will burn your career to the foundation. I will send those files to every board member, every major client, every journalist with a taste for financial scandal. I will walk into court and testify about your harassment, your affair with my wife, your fraud. I will make sure your children grow up knowing exactly why their father wears an orange jumpsuit. I will enjoy every second of it." I straightened and turned toward the door. "Oh, And one more thing, I added. If you warn Jasmine, I will know. If you help her move money, delete files, or prepare for what is coming, I will consider that another attack. And I am very good at counterattacks. I'll learn from professionals. I left him there, pale and shaking behind his big desk, and walked out of that building feeling like I had lit the first fuse. Over the next week, Jasmine grew restless. She sensed danger without understanding its shape. She tried everything in her manipulation toolkit. Seductive lingerie she had not touched in years. Angry accusations that I had changed. Sudden tears and apologies for being distant, without naming the real reason. Every time, I met her with a calm, impersonal patience that drove her crazy. She also grew nosy. She tried to access our bank accounts, and found them mysteriously limited. She tried to log onto my laptop and hit a password wall. One afternoon, I came home early and found her in my office, rifling through a drawer I had deliberately left slightly ajar. She froze when she saw me in the doorway, gripping a stack of printed financial statements. "What is this?" Jasmine demanded, shaking the papers as if they might confess. "The bank says everything is in your name now. The house, the cars, the savings. I tried to buy a pair of shoes today, and my car got declined. They said you moved money into business accounts I cannot access. When did that happen? What are you doing?" I walked in slowly, took the papers from her hands, and set them back in the drawer. Those documents were decoys, created with Nicole's help, painting a picture of a man stretched thin and deeply in debt. "My company needed capital," I said. "We are expanding. Big contracts. You always said I should take my career seriously, remember?" "What company?" she snapped. "Since when do you have a company? You were just a contractor, Elijah. You work for other people." The word just slid out of her mouth like an insult. "Brooks Steel Solutions," I replied. "We have been operating for 2 years. We landed a stadium contract in Phoenix last month. We are hiring. We are doing very well." I met her eyes. "I told you about it, Jasmine. Several times. You were too busy texting to listen." For the first time, she looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. A black man she had married, who had quietly built an empire she did not know about. Her eyes narrowed. "You are punishing me," she said quietly. "You know something?" "What do you know?" "I'm not punishing you," I answered. "I'm protecting myself. There is a difference." I let that hang in the air until she looked away, unease creeping over her face like a shadow. The final confrontation came at Blue Ridge Summit Resort, the mountain escape she and Reginald had chosen as their playground. Leon had intercepted the email confirming their reservation. Reginald had been careless enough to send it from his work account. I booked my own cabin at the resort under a different name, paid cash, and arrived several hours before they did. The resort was everything Jasmine liked. Stone fireplaces, high ceilings, luxury spa, soft jazz in the lobby, and prices that could make your chest hurt. Couples walked hand in hand past the big windows overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains, wrapped in cozy sweaters and illusions. I sat at the bar with a club soda, watching the entrance. When Jasmine and Reginald arrived, they looked like they were stepping into a magazine spread. She wore a deep red dress that hugged her curves, her hair styled in waves that brushed her shoulders. He wore an expensive suit and the kind of smug smile that screams, "I am used to getting away with everything." They did not see me as they checked in, laughing softly, bodies angled toward each other. I waited until their bags had been delivered to their suite. $50 to a housekeeper who had seen this routine too many times before got me a spare key card and a room number. I stood outside their door for a long moment, listening to the muffled sound of music and clinking glasses. Then I slid the card, heard the lock click, and walked in. They were on the balcony, her back against his chest, his arms around her waist as they looked out over the mountains. 2 champagne flutes sat on the railing beside them, catching the last light of the setting sun. For a second, I simply watched them, cataloging the easy intimacy they had stolen from me. "Beautiful view," I said, my voice steady and clear. Jasmine's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the balcony tiles, champagne spreading like a pale stain. She spun around, her mouth falling open. Reginald turned too, shock warring with irritation. For a heartbeat, none of us moved. "Elijah," Jasmine whispered. "What are you doing here? How did you?" Her voice broke. The color drained from her face, leaving her skin ashy beneath the expensive makeup. I I stepped farther into the suite, glancing around. The king-size bed was already turned down. A bottle of top-shelf champagne sweated in a silver bucket. A tray of chocolate-covered strawberries sat untouched. I just wanted to see where my money has been going, I said. Nice room. Romantic. I hear the champagne pairs well with adultery. Reginald moved in front of Jasmine, trying to posture. You need to leave, he said. This is private property. I will call security. You are trespassing. He sounded more rattled than he wanted to admit. I smiled slightly. By now, I said, checking my watch, Nicole has finished emailing your board of directors. They have copies of your financial crimes going back 7 years. They know about the settlements, the shell companies, the money that went missing. They also have a highlight reel of your extracurricular activities with employees. By morning, you will not be worried about resort security. You will be worried about federal agents. Reginald grabbed his phone with shaking hands. Notifications covered the screen. Texts, emails, missed calls. His eyes flicked over them, the blood draining from his face. You cannot do this, he said softly. You are bluffing. Already did it, I answered. You should take that call from your board chair when it comes. I bet it will be intense. I turned my attention to Jasmine, who stood frozen, hands clasped in front of her like a child caught stealing. So this is the escape from your boring life, I said. Was it worth it? Tears welled in her eyes instantly. Elijah, please, Jasmine said. We can talk about this. Just you and me. She jerked her head toward Reginald. Does not matter. I made a mistake. We can fix this. A mistake. I repeated. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. Sleeping with your married boss in my house for months, using my money to fund your little vacations, and helping him commit crimes is not a mistake, Jasmine. It is a pattern. It is who you chose to be. I watched her flinch at every word. Reginald tried one more time to regain control. You think you're some kind of hero, he snarled. You are just a bitter man who could not keep his wife satisfied. I gave her what you could not. I crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed him by the front of his expensive suit, and slammed him against the wall. Frames rattled. His eyes went wide. I have done things to better men than you in places where nobody asked questions, I said quietly. Hurting you would be easy. Too easy. But I want you alive. I want you to watch your world collapse. I want every day of your ruined career to remind you that this started because you could not keep your hands off another man's wife. I let him go. He slid down a few inches and stayed there, trembling. Jasmine pressed a hand to her mouth, a small sound escaping her. I walked over to the coffee table, pulled a folder from my jacket, and dropped it there. Those are divorce papers, I told her. Already filed. In this folder is the inventory of what you are leaving with, whatever is in your personal checking account, and whatever clothes you can pack that I do not donate. That is it. You cannot do that, Jasmine said, voice breaking. We are married. I have rights. This is community property. She looked wildly from me to the papers, as if they might contradict me. The house is mine, I replied. Bought in my name before we married, and kept that way on purpose. The cars are mine. The savings are mine. The investments are mine. Brooks Steel Solutions belongs to me, and the law agrees. You are walking away from this marriage with a suitcase and a story no one wants to hear. Elijah, please, she whispered, stepping closer. I was in love. I thought. You were in love with excitement. I interrupted. With luxury. With being chosen by a man who threw money around and made you feel special. You were in love with yourself, Jasmine. Not with me. Not with our vows. And certainly not with the truth. I headed for the door. At the threshold, I turned back one last time. Do you remember that night you called me 18 times? I asked. When you were scared and alone and begging me to come save you. She nodded, tears running silently now. I was awake, I said. I read every text. I listened to every ring. And I decided you were right. Where you were and what you were doing were not my business. That is the one lesson you taught me that I really took to heart. I left them standing there in their perfectly curated ruin and drove down the mountain with my windows open, the cold air cutting through the last of the fog in my mind. Back in Charlotte, the real destruction began. Nicole filed for divorce with a petition so thorough the judge later called it a model of documentation. She also forwarded her summary of Reginald's financial crimes to the Securities and Exchange Commission and to a contact at the Internal Revenue Service. Cole's strategic media imploded almost overnight. The board called an emergency meeting, suspended Reginald, and then terminated him for cause. News of the investigation leaked, and within days a local business reporter published an article about widespread irregularities. Clients fled. Employees jumped ship. Federal agents walked through those glossy glass doors with warrants in hand. Jasmine tried to spin the story. She told her parents that I had become cold and controlling. She told her friends I had trapped her financially. Social media heard a watered-down version of events where she was the misunderstood wife who had fallen for someone else. But screenshots have power. Once people saw her texts and photos with dates that lined up perfectly with work, emergencies, sympathy dried up. What she did not expect was how fast Reginald turned on her. When prosecutors approached him with a deal, less time in exchange for full cooperation, he put on his best suit and painted her as the mastermind. She seduced me, he insisted. She brought me documents from her husband's files. She pushed me to move money. She wanted a new life and talked me into doing things I never would have done alone. It was pathetic. It was predictable. It was exactly what men like him always do. Investigators followed the trail. They found emails Jasmine had forwarded from my home computer, contract proposals, pricing sheets, confidential strategy documents from my clients. They tracked accounts briefly opened in my name without my knowledge. Nicole had anticipated this, leaving a clear record of my own financial moves that kept me miles away from any suspicion. When Jasmine was indicted on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and corporate espionage, I was in Nicole's office again, signing the last page of our divorce settlement. Nicole's phone buzzed. She listened for a moment, then hung up with a smile that was almost feral. "The district attorney's office just filed," she said. "Your ex-wife is officially a defendant. Reginald is next. They are looking at serious time." The house felt different after I changed the locks. Lighter. I hired contractors to turn Jasmine's walk-in closet into a small gym, her home office into a library, her vanity-filled bathroom into a steam room. Every trace of her, clothes, photos, perfume, went into boxes. Some went to charity. Some went into the trash. By the time the renovations were finished, it was as if she had never lived there. Leon showed up one evening with a bottle of 25-year-old scotch. We sat on my back deck, two black men who had walked through war zones, watching the Carolina sky burn orange and pink. "You did what you had to do," he said finally, raising his glass. "You did not let them walk over you." I nodded. There were no regrets left, only a clear, open path in front of me. 2 months after the divorce was final, Brooks Steel Solutions landed that stadium contract in Phoenix. $65 million of steel, sweat, and planning. We hired 80 new employees, engineers, welders, project managers, many of them black folks from neighborhoods like the one I grew up in who just needed someone to give them a shot. Our offices expanded into Georgia, Virginia, and Illinois. Developers started calling me instead of me chasing them. 6 months after the divorce, on a cold November evening that smelled like approaching snow, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, Jasmine stood on the porch. The transformation was brutal. The glamorous woman in rented luxury suites was gone. In her place was a tired black woman in faded jeans, a thrift store jacket, and sneakers whose soles were coming apart. Her hair hung limp. Her eyes were hollow. "Elijah," she said, voice cracking. "Please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "You have too," I replied. "Make them count." She looked past me, toward the warm light in my living room, toward the home that used to be partly hers. Tears filled her eyes. "I lost everything," Jasmine whispered. "My job, my apartment, my car. My friends stopped returning my calls. The trial is next month, and my public defender says I'm looking at 8 to 12 years in prison. They're saying I was some kind of mastermind. They're saying I pushed Reginald into all of it. And you want what from me?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Money? A place to stay? A shoulder?" She flinched at the last word. "I want you to tell them the truth," Jasmine said quickly. "Tell the court I did not know what Reginald was doing. Tell them I was just having an affair, that I did not understand the fraud. Tell them I am not that person." I laughed once, short and sharp. "That would be a lie," I said. "You knew what you were sending him. You were not blind. You forwarded confidential files from my office. You helped him undercut my bids. You opened accounts using my social security number. You moved money. That is not ignorance. That is participation. She grabbed my forearm, fingers digging in. I was in love, she cried. He promised me everything. A house in the city. A ring. A future. He told me we would build a life together once he left his wife. I believed him. I made stupid choices because I cared. I do not deserve prison for falling in love. You're going to prison because you committed crimes, I said. The affair ruined our marriage. The crimes ruined your life. Those are two separate things. I eased my arm out of her grip. You made choices. You knew they were wrong every step of the way, and you made them anyway. She sank to her knees on my front step, sobbing. Please, Elijah. I am begging you. I will work for you when I get out. I will pay you back. I will sign anything you want. I just cannot go to prison. I am terrified. I will not survive there. I looked down at her, at the woman I had once promised to love and protect. I remembered her laughter in my living room while I stood in the hallway invisible. I remembered her telling me my business was not her concern. I remembered 18 missed calls in the middle of the night and my quiet decision to let the phone ring. You made sure I would not survive our marriage with my dignity intact, I said. Now you're asking me to save you from the consequences you chose. No. She looked up at me, face wet, mascara streaking down her cheeks. You are really going to let me go to prison? She whispered. You are just going to stand here and watch this happen? I'm not letting anything happen, I answered. The state of North Carolina is. The federal government is. You, Reginald, and your greed did this. I just stopped you from walking away unscathed. I am done cleaning up your messes. I hate you. Jasmine spat, anger flaring through her despair. You are cold. You are cruel. You are worse than I ever was. You planned this. You set me up. I did not make you cheat, I said calmly. I did not make you steal from my clients. I did not tell you to open accounts in my name or send secret files to your lover. I simply refused to save you. There's a difference. I opened the door and stepped inside. Good luck, Jasmine. I closed the door on her sobs, leaned against it for a moment, and then walked to the kitchen. My phone buzzed. It was Leon. Saw your visitor. You okay? I replied, better than okay. It is finally done. For months later, Jasmine stood in court wearing a plain suit that did not fit quite right. I sat behind Nicole at the prosecution's table, watching. The evidence came in waves. Emails, bank records, testimony from former co-workers. Reginald took the stand and blamed her for everything he could, but the prosecutor tore his credibility apart with his own contradictions. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Jasmine was convicted on 7 out of 9 counts. The judge sentenced her to 9 years in federal prison. Reginald received 22. Their grand affair had lasted 7 months. 7 months of thrill for decades of consequences. Meanwhile, Brooks Steel Solutions kept growing. We opened offices in 8 states, from Texas to Maryland. I bought a penthouse downtown with a better view than Reginald's old office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city lights. I started dating again, slowly. When I met Camille Harris, a structural engineer with a sharp mind and a dry sense of humor, I told her my whole story. She listened without flinching. You did not destroy them, Camille said one evening as we walked along the riverfront. You just stopped them from getting away with destroying you. She slipped her hand into mine. Over time, we built something real. 2 black professionals, both scarred, both determined to do better without pretending our past never happened. 2 years after the divorce, Camille and I got married in a small ceremony in Charlotte. Just family, close friends, and Leon standing beside me as my best man. No drama, no secrets, just vows we both understood the weight of. When Jasmine's sister later called to ask if I would write a character letter for Jasmine's first parole hearing, I said no. Some bridges are not meant to be rebuilt. Some lessons only matter if they leave a scar. On a clear night, not long after that, I stood on my penthouse balcony with Camille at my side. The city spread out below us. Buildings I had helped construct, streets I had driven down in rage and in peace, lives intersecting in 1,000 ways. I lifted my glass. Not to forgiveness, not to mercy, just to the simple, quiet fact that I had survived, that I had refused to be the man everyone expected to swallow betrayal and smile. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.